But say you get really educated about a policy area, well, you're more likely to get sucked into that polarization the more educated you get about a thing. But if you feel like, okay, I'm learning about this, and I've talked to my congressman, or I know that I can go to my city council, my member of city council, and at least talk to their chief of staff. Maybe you'll start focusing on solving the problem you're really interested in rather than just winning the political fight. And I think that's kind of what we're hoping, right? Is that people start seeing the actual problem as the problem, not the other person as the problem.
On this week's episode of Establishing Your Empire, Nathan Ryan. Nathan has a wide range of experiences and involvement, from being a designer at Disney to former CEO of a global marketing agency to now CEO of BlueSky Partners. He's also co-founder of GoodPolitics. Our wide-ranging conversation starts out more in the marketing and business consulting world, and then dives into Austin's current homelessness situation. And then we dive into everyone's favorite subject, politics. You're listening to the Establishing Your Empire show, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs, creatives, and future business owners to pursue their passions, grow their organizations, and build their empire. My name is Daran Herrman, and creatively, I'm best known for my photography. But business-wise, my claim to fame is growing a company from $15K per month in online sales to breaking the $1 million a month barrier. And I'm sitting down with interesting people to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how they have established their empires. Nathan Ryan, thank you so much for coming to the podcast here. I'm real excited to have you here today. Why don't you start and give us a little background of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to be here. And I think I already mentioned this, but the setup is really cool.
I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Super cool. I'm like geeking out in here. So my background, do you want the long or the short version?
I would like the long version, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, then we'll start. So I was born in Houston, or near Houston in Conroe, Texas, which is just northeast of Houston, near the Woodlands. Spent the first 3 years of my life in a little town that I like to say sounds like South Park made it up to make fun of what small towns, like what a caricature of a small town would be in Texas, but it's called Cut and Shoot, Texas.
Interesting.
As in like cut and shoot.
That's so funny. And how small? Because I probably have you beat.
I think it's about 2,000.
Okay, I'm 200.
Oh wow!
But in between two other
Texas?
towns. No, in Kansas.
Okay.
But it was in between two towns, so you know.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you beat me
Barely.
by a magnitude of 10.
Yeah, that's sad. But
No,
anyway,
that's great. Wow. Okay. What was the town called?
Gorm.
Okay.
Which is another interesting, and it's pronounced. If you looked at the spelling, it's like Gorham. So it's another.
Okay.
You wonder why the town stayed small.
No, I don't. So spent the first 3 years of my life in Cut and Shoot. My dad was a pastor at a small church there. Got asked to go and work with a struggling church in Southern California, north of Los Angeles, called in Valencia, in 1990. So on January 15th, 1990, and that date will come back later, we moved from Texas to California. I was a musician growing up. So I was a drummer. I started touring as a drummer at age 15. I got married. My wife and I got married when I was 22. She was 21. We'll be celebrating 10 years this year.
Congratulations, man. That's
10
years already.
Thank you. Yeah, I took a break from touring as a drummer to graduate with all my high school friends back at the high school that I went to, because I'd been doing basically school, on the road via charter school. While I was touring, went back for my last semester, and then went back on the road. But shortly before my wife and I got married, or shortly after, I can't remember. I think it was shortly after, I quit the band because, $125 per gig maximum, where you spend most of that on food and gas, just wasn't going to cut it. So I started studying graphic design while I was on the road, and ended up running into an old family friend who turned out to run a studio that did most of the packaging, specialty packaging for Disney and Fox DVD releases. So I got to go in, and he asked me if I'd want to come in and intern with him. And I went in and interned with him for about a year, worked on everything from Pearl Harbor to Sin City to, what was some of the other, Roger Rabbit re-released, and we did some really
Wow.
immersive packaging for that. And then he got hired by Disney as a VP, creative director, and he brought me with him as a junior designer. So I dropped out of college, went and worked for Disney. Was there for about a year and a half. And what was really interesting about that experience was it was a startup division of Disney. So it was about 18 people. So large startup, lots of funding, $200 million in Disney startup funding. But it was still a startup within the company, and it was part of the larger company. So I had a very, very packed year of learning about what startup culture looks and feels like, and how to deal with corporate culture with that year at Disney. And then went from there, worked at a couple larger agencies in the LA area, mostly focused in the film industry, and then started an agency in 2011 with some friends called Toy. We did work mostly in branding, and at that point in time, you could charge close to $100,000 to build a WordPress website.
Right. Yeah. Not anymore.
No, not anymore.
It's a little tough.
It's very hard. But that's kind of the business we got into in 2011. We scaled it up and four offices, 2 states, 2 countries. So we started in Los Angeles. We opened an office in San Francisco because we were working with a lot of startups. And then we all but acquired, not fully acquired, but all but acquired a company in Buenos Aires. They became essentially the bulk of our production was done there. And then we opened this office in Austin in 2015. And so in 2017, after 2 years of scaling Toy up, I stepped down from the CEO position, which I'd been CEO for about 3 years at that point. Stepped down and started BlueSky Partners the end of 2017. And BlueSky Partners essentially takes design thinking methodologies and applies them to building out business models and building out business operational plans and things like that. And we've been around for just over 2 years as of last December. And then over the last few years, I've gotten involved in a bunch of other stuff. I've always been really interested in, I think there's a through line here of design and organizing people and things like that. And I've always been interested in politics and policy. And so I run an organization here in town called GoodPolitics with my friend Liz. And then I'm on 2 city commissions, the Economic Prosperity Commission, where we focus on making budget recommendations to council for things like workforce development and workplace readiness and infrastructure and housing and affordability. And then I'm on the Ethics Review Commission as well, which is we essentially handle any internal complaint against a member of city council or a member of city staff. And then I'm on the board of directors at the LBJ Libraries Future Forum. And then I own a small stake in a hard ginger beer company out of Napa, just for fun.
So it sounds like that one's just more of the passion side of it.
Yeah, it's also very good ginger beer.
Great. So, all right. So obviously the packaging company, you had that because of a contact, right? But how did you go from having a job that paid you money to starting your own firm? Because that can be very scary to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So maybe walk me through that thought process and how that happened.
Yeah. I mean, so, this was in the depths of the Great Recession, right? And companies were slashing jobs pretty frequently. And one thing that happened there was the reason I moved from Disney to an agency is because Disney was getting rid of a lot of people in the department that I was in. And they made a deal with the agency that they were already outsourcing to take on
a lot of the work.
Yeah. A lot of the work. And with that, if they were going to increase the contract, a few key team members as well. So I got moved over to the agency to work on some of the Disney work. Well, as those budgets continued to shrink, they started looking for ways to reduce their contracts with the agency as well. So I had somebody approach me while I was at the agency, and they didn't say, it was never brought up, hey, you should leave the agency, we'll give you the contract. They said, we would like to give you a contract directly to work on these things. Can you bid on it? And then I bid on it, and then I won it, and it was like my whole year's salary, basically.
And then what now?
Well, and then I had somebody contact me from Princess Cruises, because Princess Cruises was based in Valencia, where I lived. And they said, hey, we heard that you can help with some of the, I was doing a lot of print design at this point, and they do these cruise port guides. And they were like, we heard that you do a lot of design work. We heard that you do print work. Would you be interested in helping design these port guides? And, this is not real, like the stuff I was doing for Disney was real design heavy, right? Like I'm thinking through the structure of these pages and all that kind of stuff. The work for Princess Cruises was like, here's a Word document, here's a template, just add all of the copy into this. And so I landed that contract for a year. And once I had those two, this was probably in 2010, it was very easy for me to just say, I'm going to step back from the agency that I have a full-time gig. And I had just gotten married. So, it felt like very tenuous, even though in retrospect, it was actually really a great deal. These two very, very solid contracts, very, very long-term.
What's interesting to me is you didn't just stay just a freelancer.
No.
So I still think there's a story there of, okay, I got some contracts and we have similar stories.
Yeah.
I actually started my agency just because people kept saying, hey, you can do this, right? You can do this, right? And had a ton of revenue before I had even a name. But
right.
So walk me through how you grew it from a couple contracts to a full agency.
Well, so that was actually a different thing.
Interesting.
So what happened was I had these two contracts that were good. But I actually, this is kind of a theme as well. I do a lot of organizing. I enjoy managing. I enjoy working with people, all of that. I didn't always want to be a designer. I didn't want to stay a designer. So I had these two contracts. They were great. But I also had some friends that really enjoyed doing design work. And they were much more keyed into, I was very much in the entertainment world. They were much more keyed into the startup space. And so they started designing websites and things like that. And I didn't have any experience with that, but what I was good at was dealing with clients and dealing with internal teams and working out budgeting details and all of that. That again, going back to some of that training from Disney, I wasn't scared of walking into a room I didn't know what was going on. I'd learned a lot of really good skills for how to deal with people and how to get down to brass tacks and negotiate and do all that kind of stuff. So when my friends were starting Toy, they brought me in essentially as a project manager. And at that point, I started letting go of these contracts with Disney and with, I started letting them go, and also they dwindled because they realized we're paying way too much money to get this done. This is very easy work. And in another wave of slashing budgets, they started slashing budgets, and it made it easy for me to start taking on more full-time work with Toy. So I essentially started with Toy as a project manager while I was closing out other accounts. With my friends Dave and Antonio. And Dave was the guy who knew everybody in the Bay Area and had a lot of connections and could sell ice to an Eskimo. And Antonio was the creative genius, still is. Not with Toy, he's doing his own thing now, but is still a creative genius. And then I came in as kind of this operational piece, essentially. And it was just the three of us to start. And then it scaled up rather quickly. So, for me, it was, I wish I could say I had like some sort of master plan going from step to step here. But I think I was trying to make the best choice given the choices that were in front of me, with the goal of building something on my own, with friends, and putting myself in a position where I could continually learn new skills, right? Those were kind of the two things that were most important to me. And if we made some money in the process, then great, which we did, which was good.
Yeah. And obviously you probably did a good job as well. So I literally just had somebody call me yesterday. He's a project manager at a design firm. He's got somebody sending him some contracts. He wants to move up that chain, either internally or on his own. How'd you move from project manager to CEO? Like, any advice there, or what happened?
I think for me, I did make it pretty clear early on when I joined Toy that I would love to run the company someday. So I was very clear with both of the founders at the time that was a goal of mine.
Which is very important. I think if you make your intentions clear in negotiations early on, it's way easier than a year later.
Yeah, or when the moment you feel like you've got the most leverage is also the most likely time that it could blow back, right? And so if you're waiting to take a step like that or to say what your true intentions actually are, by the time you do it, people may assume you have different intentions and be very upset when they find out that you've been hiding that as a goal. And so for me, it was like, I want to be really upfront and honest. And I felt like I had a lot to learn from Dave and from Antonio. And this was Dave's, second or third agency at the time. And he'd done really well with his previous one. So for me, it was, I'm happy to come in. I know I have a lot to learn, but I also want to run this company at some point if I get involved and if I give up some of these other things that I've been working on. At the time, I was also running a magazine on the side, just for fun, focused on art in unexpected places. We did 8 issues. We had 12 people working on it. Nobody ever really made any money that was meaningful. But again, this was recession, right? And a lot of people had just graduated college. They were creative types, and essentially it proved a massive help from a community standpoint. But it also was a really good resume builder for a lot of people.
For me, a lot of times those side projects like that, especially creative ones, if I'm not losing money, it's almost like you're winning, because if you can sustain it and you're building community, very similar to this podcast, right? It takes a lot of time, but you're building community, relationships.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that are happening.
Yep.
And money comes with that. If you can provide a lot of value, it can come. And it comes in different forms. Like, it might not be exactly through the magazine, but through, like you said, a relationship.
Exactly. Well, and real quick, just to recap the thought around, project manager to CEO, for me, it was mostly just saying, I'm going to take on as much responsibility as I can. I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to take on more responsibility. And it was just constantly that, right? It was constantly, I wasn't saying, you need to pay me more in order for me to take this responsibility on. It was, I'm going to take this responsibility on. Okay, now look at these results. We're growing. I need to move into this position. So I moved from project manager to director of operations to effectively COO to CEO. And it was just constantly that. It was, I'm taking on more. Okay, as founding members and other team members got overwhelmed, I would take that stuff on. I would figure out a way to deal with it, either with myself, somewhere else in the team, or find another outsourced partner to help us deal with things. And it was just constantly solving problems, constantly taking on more responsibility. And I think that was the way that I kind of moved up naturally.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And it sounds like also because your intentions were clear. It's almost like, let me back up a little bit. A lot of people I help with their negotiations, and I always say, hey, don't ask for a raise out of the blue, right? Maybe say, hey, let's do a meeting, and then ask your boss or your manager, or what can I do to be more impactful for this organization? How can I provide more value? Go and do those things, and they'll be like, look, I did all this stuff, right?
Exactly.
So, can I and then ask for the raise or compensation or title or whatever you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things with Toy as well as BlueSky Partners is this idea that I looked up. It's called sprint methodology. So I'm very interested in this.
Yeah.
I've read about it, but I would love to hear how you explain it and give everybody some knowledge here.
Yeah, absolutely. So sprint methodology, the idea is essentially, if you've got a project, right? Let's say with BlueSky Partners, a lot of work that we do is we help companies go from, let's say, 0 to 1 or 1 to 2 or whatever that growth stage is for them, whatever that next step is for them, we help them get there. And one of the things that we end up doing pretty frequently is helping them kind of rethink their model entirely. Well, how do you rethink a model? You're going to do a lot of market research. You're going to look at what their current operations, their current structure looks like. You're going to look at what contracts and terms look like. You're going to think about what the financial model is. And then you're going to think about, okay, with all of those things, how do we implement this and stretch ourselves, stretch the organization enough so that it can handle the change that is coming that it really wants, right? But that's a massive project if you don't chunk it out. So sprints is essentially saying we're going to look at this massive project, but we're going to look at it in sprints. We're going to look at it in chunks, and we're going to take this big sort of nebulous thing, and we're going to turn it into, step one is a week-long sprint where we focus on really digging into your numbers and looking at where your money is actually coming from and where it's actually going. And then sprint two is we're going to build out a new model, and it's going to take us 2 weeks. And these are going to be the steps. These are going to be the times that we get together in a room and everybody shuts their phone off and we work on this one thing, and we, get the whiteboard and the Post-it notes out, and we really think about how to prioritize everything that your company could possibly be doing to be making money and everything it could possibly be spending money on. And then we're going to build the model out, and then we're going to test it with a bunch of assumptions. And that's 2 weeks, and then we're going to move on to what does this mean operationally? How does this change your structure? We're going to spend 2 weeks on that. So, the sprint methodology essentially just says we're going to do as much work as we can all in the same room, and we're going to do very, very highly defined deliverables within a very, very, ideally as quick of a time frame as possible, right? So our sprints can go anywhere from 1 week to 6, but we really don't go beyond that. 6 weeks is about as long as we'll go on a sprint.
Is it typically in person with your clients, or?
So we are actually, as of this year, we've got clients in Maryland and New York, in addition to Texas. And we are kind of piloting what the digital sprint consulting relationship looks like. But
which makes sense. It's way more scalable, and why not with video conferencing? That's so fantastic.
Exactly. Well, and a lot of we do, as part of those sprints, we do what are called work sessions. Part of our thought and part of our value prop with BlueSky is we take a project that you don't have time for and we get it done. But that still means we're going to need somebody's time from our client side. But, after our first year where we were trying to work or do meetings, status updates, stuff like that, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it was a good use of anybody's time, including our own. Excuse me. So we started doing what we call work sessions in the middle of these. So, we'll do a 2-hour long work session with the client where everything we need to get from them for that week, we get it done in 2 hours. We do it with them. We sit down with them. We get the work done with them. And then the next week, we do it again. And then we say, here's the project. We're going to review it with you. Okay, we're either going to, continue. We're going to add more deliverables to this, and we're going to make tweaks, and that's going to be another sprint. Or we're going to move on to the next thing because you feel good about that.
There's so many things I love about this already. One of the items that typically will delay a project is simply the back and forth between the client and the agency. Mm-hmm. There's so many times I actually now even tell a client, like, if you want this faster, literally all you have to do is respond within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I love how you get it all done in one time. I also think there's a lot of confidence on your part to be able to do it in front of them.
Right.
And I'm sure you've done plenty of projects with the team and have great people, but for some reason, the design agency, and I think in the creative world, we like to get the task and then huddle in our little corners and do it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Well, and we do have a partnership with BlueSky with a company here in town called Honeycomb. So we have started doing a little bit more marketing, but we're not primarily a marketing agency at this point. We're business consulting, operations, things like that. But even when we are doing a marketing project and we have Honeycomb in the room, we do a lot of mission, vision, values work with companies, but we intentionally said that we wanted to see how our values played out before we solidified them for BlueSky. That said, one of ours that is for sure a value is that we are real, we are not fake, and we make that very clear up front, right? We actually, before I came here, we had a kickoff call with a client And, one of the things I told him was we kind of shoot from the hip all the time, and we will tell you if we don't know something. We will tell you if we need to do more research. We will tell you if we don't feel comfortable taking that project on. And we want to have a good time with you. Like if we're in the room and we're working on something, we want to show our work. We want you to see how we're thinking through stuff, because the goal is that you are going to bring other people in the future, and hopefully you see how we process this. And you are able to bring other people in because you've gotten a little bit of a look inside. There's no black box here. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a principle of ours to do that.
Love it. So how or why did you start BlueSky Partners?
We started it for a few reasons. I think the first one would probably be, everybody on our founding team has been part of and or started, scaled, and exited their own company. And we know how lonely that can be, and we know how challenging that can be. And we also know that at a certain point you hit a wall where you are growing, but you don't have enough money to bring on a new full-time executive. You also don't want to start handing projects off to somebody at a junior level. But consultants are slippery, and working with consultants is not always a good idea.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad ones out there. It's
Yeah.
kind of like coaches or,
Yeah.
I mean, I think in every industry there is
Yeah, of course.
people that don't have the,
Right.
really the weight that they say that they have.
Right. Well, in one of the stories that I talk about when we talk about what we do is I hired a client or a consultant once to help us rethink our sales process. And it was about a 6-week thing. Got a PowerPoint back that looked like it had just done a find and replace on the name of the company and the names of people. And nothing was special about it. It looked like a totally stock, maybe even purchased it from somebody else. And we got a bill for $36,000.
Wow.
And so for us with BlueSky, it was, let's come in and be really supportive for companies that are growing, because we know what that feels like. Let's price ourselves in a way that allows us to stick around and really act like we're part of the team. And then let's take the agency model that we know so well and let's apply it to business development and business operations. There are tons of incredible subject matter experts that are consultants out there that hate selling. They hate getting on the phone and selling themselves, but they really love doing the work. So let's build a partner network of people that are subject matter experts in finance and in facilitation and in mediation and in legal. And then as let's build that into our model with their price points, their hourly rates. Let's pay them more than they ask for if we can. And as we work through these projects with clients, we save our clients money because we cover those subject matter experts under our budget. And we get to be really, really resourceful there with them throughout the journey. I end up doing a lot of, sort of one-on-one leadership coaching throughout these processes, even if that's not a part of our scope, just because it's kind of it's just a big deal. It's part of what I think BlueSky should do from a mental health standpoint, is to be a partner for some of these founders.
Also sounds like you might like that too,
I
right?
also would do it regardless. I think
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of innate.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So what's your approach to marketing for your own agencies, right? And it sounds like maybe even these freelancers probably help you with some referral networks as well. And so how do you market your company?
Well, to this point, it's been word of mouth. And some strategic partnerships with groups here in town to produce events and one-off things like that, where we're getting our logo on things. We really just wanted to increase name ID for the company. So we've been doing that over the last 2 years. This will be the first year that we actually start paying for advertising and things like that, because we're rolling out some stuff that's a little, marketing consulting is it's hard because it can be fairly nebulous. Even marketing something like the Sprint program or Sprint Retainer or anything like that, you still have to do a lot of work to get somebody to trust you the way that we want them to trust us to jump in for 12 months. if they see us, if they see our logo on an event that they really like, they may come to us for something like that if they hear that pitch at that event. But online, it's just, you don't get that same sort of interaction level. But we are rolling out workshops this year that are going to focus on some things like financial modeling, time blocking, and mission, vision, values, all of which we have done up to this point and we have sold. But we're rolling them out in a more packaged sort of like one click to purchase way. And we'll be able to advertise those a lot better via online ads.
Yeah, I think it sounds like just a higher touch to all your, and that sounds like it's a constant theme between not only your marketing, but also when you actually go into a business. And, you don't want to scale too fast, too quick. Like, walk me through what's a client, like what's an average client? What, not really money wise, but like, are these large companies, small companies? Like, what's their size?
I would say the average client for us is doing about $2 million in revenue per year.
So medium-sized companies.
Yeah, doing about $2 million in revenue per year. And like is trying to figure out how to get to 4, but because they're doing 2 million and they have been growing as rapidly as they have, they don't have time to sit back and think about the long-term strategy, or even if they do, they get very quickly sucked back in. So we tend to come in at that point and help run those projects in the background that are more medium or long-term thinking, so that they can stay focused on their day-to-day, but still get updates about that long-term stuff that's so important to them.
Yeah. And before getting, moving from BlueSky Partners, is there any, and without giving too much detail, obviously with clients, is there any like area where you can give some examples that would help people just listening, be like, I have that problem. This is how you guys solved it perhaps. And I know yours is very custom. So go ahead.
Totally. I mean, again, the process I laid out before about rethinking a model, that is fairly routine for us. Helping rethink a financial model, helping think about how that turns into an operational model, and then actually rolling that out from a sales standpoint, from a marketing and messaging standpoint, and from an internal team and morale standpoint. That's pretty common for us. The other side of it would be, I would say pretty frequently we are consulting on marketing, and we're thinking about what a marketing strategy should look like, how to essentially build out a marketing department. What are some really interesting marketing projects or fun things? We helped a company launch a book club that's turned into a big revenue generator for them. We helped that same company launch a subscription box, and this is a services company. So like they're thinking outside of the box, I guess, with the way that they're doing their marketing, and we help them think about how that fits into their marketing strategy, put that whole program together and launch it. So those are probably the most typical. Sales and marketing kind of straddling that line and helping either get that system up and running, or actually coming in to help improve it, or rethinking a model and rolling it out in all of the ways that it needs to be rolled out.
I love it. So you've had a pretty fantastic quick progression for your career. Any like mentors that helped you along the way?
Oh yeah. So I would say the mentor that sticks out the most in my mind, it was the CEO of the agency that I went right after Disney. I had a fantastic mentor at Disney. He's the guy that really got me off the ground, and gave me an opportunity to put in the work and kind of prove myself to myself and to other people. His name was Brad Gross. But then the second one, he was the CEO at Midnight Oil, which was the agency I went to after Disney. And when I got promoted to CEO at Toy, I really didn't know who to call. And I had a decent relationship with Tom, which is the guy's name at Midnight Oil, but I didn't know him that well. But I just decided I'm going to email him and tell him that this happened. And Toy was doing really well at this point. This was late 2014, early 2015. But at the executive level, there weren't as many systems or principles in place as I would have liked. And it made a transition a little bit tougher. So transitioning into that CEO role meant I needed to like actually figure out what a real CEO looked like for a company that was growing the way that ours was. And so Tom was the first person I thought to reach out to. I reached out to him, didn't really expect much. He dove in. He got on the phone with me every week for, 2 to 3 hours at a time. And just really, really took me under his wing. And here's what, at the time, Toy was probably doing somewhere between 1 and 2 million. His company that he was still running, Midnight Oil in LA, was doing 77 million a year. And he was taking as much time as I needed, texting me, calling me, emailing, looking over documents, helping me put together terms and conditions, talking me through hard leadership conversations I needed to have. Just a really, really, it's the kind of thing that I think back to. And I think he had no reason to spend his time doing this, but he did it, and it meant a ton to me. And then, here in Austin, I feel really lucky. I don't have a formal mentor at this point. Sometimes I really think I should, but I learned so much from so many of the people in this town, whether it's Lisa and Dan Graham and watching what they're doing over at Notley, or it's, God, there's just, there are so many people that I look up to here that I try to glean as much as I can from anytime that I talk to them.
Well, you're very involved here in Austin. So what about some recommendations to get someone that would want to get more involved here in Austin, but might not have a resume that's impressive, right? So any ideas or recommendations there?
Yeah. I mean, one of the best things about Austin is that it is really, it is the kind of city that really doesn't like to just sit around and talk about things. It does like to sit around and talk about things, of course. But it's the kind of city that if you sit around and you talk about it for too long, people are going to be like, well, who are you? I mean, there are, there's a ridiculously high number of nonprofits here in town. The local government is actually surprisingly easy to get in touch with and talk to. And so I think, my first recommendation is always just reach out to any organization that you think you might have any kind of interest in either learning more about or volunteering with. Most of them will get back to you rather quickly. Most of them are very interested in getting more and more people involved so that more people are aware of their cause and or are working on towards their goals with them. And then beyond that, there are tons of really good entry points, and most everybody at every event ever is willing to sit down and talk with you about what you would like to do, what you would like to be more involved with. And then, again, another one of the things I love about the city is people are really open to say, yeah, I know that person, I'll make the introduction. And so I would say, first thing is feel comfortable reaching out and trying to get involved somewhere on your own, but also, feel comfortable bringing up to other people that you would like an introduction and start talking about the things you care about so that other people can hear that and start making connections for you. Any
organizations or events that you recommend?
Well, I would be a really bad co-founder if I didn't plug GoodPolitics.
That's what's called a softball pitch.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, if I had missed that, you would have been looking at me weird.
I'll just start turning off the cameras.
Yeah,
and the
exactly.
microphones.
Yeah, exactly. Go home, Nate. You're no good at this. So GoodPolitics, my co-founder Liz and I started it in 2018, really with the idea, the idea behind it being. So many people don't like politics, and objectively, in a lot of ways, politics is bad, but we think that the possibility for good politics exists. We are hopelessly optimistic about this. And we think the way you get there is to just kind of cut the BS and instead of focusing on issues, we focus on connecting voters or potential voters directly with candidates or elected officials without you having to donate anything to them. So our event on the 20th is, I think, so we're partnered with KUT, we're partnered with Move Texas, we're partnered with the Austin Monitor. and we're partnered with an organization called US Tomorrow for this one. It's very similar to our launch party in August of 2018. And the idea is we're going to have candidates from, every county commissioner all the way up to Congress in the room. So you can go from table to table. You'll have a card with questions you can ask them. You'll get at their table. There will be a description, a job description of the role that person is running for, so that because some of these things are very confusing, right? Like a railroad commissioner doesn't really do much with railroads in the state of Texas, for example. So we want to make sure it's clear who you're talking to and what they're actually going to be tasked with doing were they to get elected for this position. And I mean, that's the goal, is to grab a drink, go from table to table, talk to as many candidates or elected officials as you can, and hopefully feel a little bit better about the fact that it wasn't hard to talk to these people, and get involved in whatever way you feel compelled to, even if that's none at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great place there. The politics, I don't think people are as divided as it seems. I think it's more just there's some people that are more loud on the extremes, the left and the right, and there's a ton of people in the middle, way higher percentage. And I think if you actually could have a slightly more personal touch, and that sounds like a very big personal touch, it could really help people get more involved.
Well, and I agree with you on the polarization. I also think that part of the reason we focus on direct connection is that, say you get more educated about a policy area. That's great. You need to. We hope everybody does. We hope everybody is as educated as they can be. But say you get really educated about a policy area, well, you're more likely to get sucked into that polarization the more educated you get about a thing. But if you feel like, okay, I'm learning about this, and I've talked to my congressman, or I know that I can go to my city council, my member of city council, and at least talk to their chief of staff, maybe you'll start focusing on solving the problem you're really interested in rather than just winning the political fight. And I think that's kind of what we're hoping, right? Is that people start seeing the actual problem as the problem, not the other person as the problem. Like that's kind of what we're hoping.
That's really interesting. So with to stay on kind of the events and being active in Austin, South by Southwest is coming up in about a month. So walk me through your.
I can't believe that.
I know,
you said
crazy.
that and I nodded like
I know,
like I was ready for it, but I'm not ready for it.
Just sleep now so you can stay awake.
Seriously.
So walk me through your South by experiences, your recommendations, just that whole world for you.
Well, I found out this week that we're actually curating a thing called Focus 15s on the 21st. This is the last Saturday of the festival. And it'll be a like TED style talk. So there'll be 4 of them. I'll give one, and I'm still securing the other 3 speakers for this. So
it's on the last Saturday. Hopefully it's not like 8 a.m.
No, I think it starts at like 1 p.m. or something like that. In a fully air conditioned room, at the conference center somewhere. But so we've got that on the 21st, which means I will get a badge, which is great. But I've done this both ways, right? I've done South by without a badge. I've done South by with a badge. And for me, my favorite thing, so I met with Hugh Forrest probably 2 months ago, and he and I were talking, and I told him, I was like, my favorite thing about this festival is that it really just feels like the World's Fair comes to me like once a year. It just comes to me like our whole city, the whole city of Austin turns into like everything you couldn't ever imagine, and you get to see all of it. You get to walk into these installations where technology is being used that like you've read about, but you didn't even know was real yet.
Or never even thought about.
Yeah, like, exactly.
And South by is whatever you want to make it to be.
Exactly.
You can hate it if you want to.
And that's kind of what I was building towards, is like, for me, the best way to experience it is, of course, go through a day's schedule, check off the stuff that you think looks interesting, but then kind of follow your fancy. I mean, I've walked into so many sessions that I didn't think I was going to really get into just because it sounded slightly interesting, and been like completely blown away by what I've learned. And sometimes I've walked into sessions thinking it was another session, and it turned out to be fine. That I was not at the session I thought I was at. So yeah, I for me, it's badge or no badge. Walk around, get into any number of things that you can get into, and eat all the food and don't drive so that you can drink all the free booze.
So you can actually get somewhere.
Exactly.
I always do the bicycle.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, completely.
That's smart.
I lived on Rainy Street for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So I was walk or bike, usually bike, because you can get get to a lot of places really quickly.
Yeah.
Now I'm still, a mile and a half away, but what about the no badge? Let's give some recommendations. Like a lot of people think, okay, I have no badge. There's nothing I can do.
Right.
Like they just give up before starting.
Right.
So maybe any thoughts there?
I mean, first of all, the number of sponsored houses around, Founders House by my friends over at MediaTek Ventures and A Player Media, like that's an awesome experience. Inc. and Inc. magazine, and I'm trying to think of the other really big like entrepreneurial business magazine, but Inc. does Founders House as well.
Their Fortune or something.
Yeah, there are tons of those that you can get into. You just need to give them your email address, and then beyond that, I don't condone it. You can usually get into sessions.
Oh, I condone it. I'm
even without a badge.
You don't know me too well, but I'm like the world's best sneaker into the best spots. Right?
Yeah.
I carry around a big camera, so
Yeah.
And sometimes, if I know that I have someone with me, I'll carry around 2 big cameras given to somebody else. I have old press badges, could be from 5 years ago.
Yeah. I
throw them on there.
It was in 2018, and so almost every year, and I'm doing it again this year, I'm a startup pitch coach for the student startup competition at South by Southwest EDU. And I knew this was back when, Beto was really gaining steam, and he was going to be on a panel at South by, interactive, and I didn't have an interactive badge. So I folded the top of my EDU badge down and just had it on and walked into the back corner of the room. And then while I'm standing there, for some reason, terrified that somebody's gonna just come haul me out. Never happened, obviously. Beto walks in and just stands right next to me. We talked for like 10 minutes, and then I went and sat up right in the front and watched him on the panel. And yeah, I mean, you can kind of move fairly freely throughout.
Yeah, and I think my recommendations would be just go and you don't. I think if you have a strict plan, you're going to be disappointed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I also think don't try to say you're going someplace, you're waiting in line. Don't think, okay, I need to change my decision, because if you keep changing your decision, you'll end up just going from line to line to line.
Agree.
I also think the large acts, whether it's music or even speakers, is probably not always the best, because those are the hardest. I'm a big fan of the medium or even low, and just going there for 10 minutes and see.
Yeah.
If I end up liking it. Most of those you can get into without anything.
I would also say, to your point, select everything you're interested in, but kind of assume you're going to get to 25% of that.
Yeah.
And again, the idea of follow your fancy, the part of the issue is not just what do I go to? Do I go to this thing? Do I go to that thing? It's that I'm on my way to this thing and I see this other really cool thing. I mean, half the time it's really worth it. Just pull over and take a stop in that random installation. It's really that some of that, the serendipity of some of that's really cool.
Yeah. South by's amazingly terrible, fantastic, all wrapped up in one.
Totally. Well, and one very quick business recommendation from me would be, whatever your CRM is, just crack your fingers and get that thing ready. At the end of the day, if you can spend 20 minutes putting new contacts into your CRM, that goes a really long way. Last year when we did this, we collected business cards the whole time, and we built an entire pipeline for follow-ups. And every night at the end, I would take all the business cards in my pocket, put them in, create a potential deal for them. And then immediately after South by was done, we started moving those contacts through our pipeline to see if there was any potential business there or potential partnership, or just, hey, this is a company we really like and we want to know more about. That was really, really helpful for us. So that's another.
That was actually
little
something I
tidbit.
was going to say pretty much exactly to that extent is I would always send them an email, even just from my phone right away. Hey, I
Yep.
met you at this house.
Yep.
I think it's going to be nuts.
Yep.
Let's chat afterwards or whatever
Yep.
it might be. Because even myself, I almost go back through my sent and because I'll have all these cards and I'm like,
Yep.
your brain's mushed.
Yeah. Which event, which place did I meet you at? What were we talking about? All that kind of stuff. I'll usually take notes on the card.
That's a good idea because I'll even want to reach out to somebody, but then there's like 5 of those, right? So you kind of start getting confused and you don't want to be spammy to them. You want to be like, oh, this is how we met.
And another thing that I did last year is when I had run out of cards, I would just let that person email themselves from I just hand them my phone.
It's actually better.
Like plug your email address in right now and just, write where we met in the subject line and send yourself an email and then you can respond to me whenever it makes sense.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
So, all right, kind of going into the more personal, like, so what does success mean to you or look like for you?
I mean, clearly I would love to be as financially comfortable as possible. I'd also like to be in a position where I can give back financially as much as possible. That would be really successful for me. I would say the opportunity to work with and work on issues that are important to me and support those financially, support those through, whatever gifts I possibly have and can give via something like BlueSky Partners or other ways is important to me. And with something like BlueSky Partners, employing as many people as possible would be successful to me. And I think we're on a trajectory to be hiring a decent amount towards the end of this year and going into next. I think, I mean, I don't know if you're looking for a more specific answer, but
that's you versus you, man, for success.
Yeah.
So what about with the GoodPolitics thing and a lot of the nonprofit work that you do you foresee yourself ever entering the political arena?
I've thought about it. Yeah.
And then what about currently of what you've done over your course of your career and your life? What are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of the fact that, there's a very, 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 very small list of bridges that have been burned. Through all of these things I've been involved in, even when there's contention, even when things don't go the way that I want them to, or whatever that collective we is, want them to. I think the thing I'm most proud of is that I can say I'm still friends with everybody that I've worked with, and I work with a lot of friends. And any of the coalitions I've been involved in helping put together, they get along. And so those are the relationships matter the most to me. The fact that those relationships are still intact, I think, is the thing I'd be most proud of.
It's not easy to do.
It is not easy to do. It is not. And I credit a lot of people for putting up with me.
The way that they do. I like it.
Okay.
So you started kind of, I would say semi-adult life, at least, as a band member, drummer. Has your life turned out different than what you imagined?
Oh, yeah. Totally. I mean, 15-year-old Nate thought he was going to be in one of your photos up here.
Right.
I mean, I definitely have gone a different route. I mean, I think part of the reason I picked design as a focus area is just because it was creative, it was artistic, but it was also going to pay me. But, I talk about this often with friends of mine who are also musicians who have ended up in business. And I tell them, in some weird sort of way, I think being in a band, the band that I toured with, we were more of like a stadium rock sort of band, but we would jam a lot on stage, right? So you've got songs that are recorded at 4 minutes, but we'd play them live and they'd go for 12 or 15. And it was kind of jazz esque, very much just kind of following the leader, and sometimes the leader would change, and I was the one driving, and then as the drummer, and then next the guitar player would start, and so you learn all these really interesting ways to just improv with people and feel comfortable doing it. And I think that that skill is still very present in my life. I'm completely comfortable. I'm completely comfortable improving, especially around a group of people that I trust, to try to solve a thing or finish a thing. And so, yeah, it looks completely different. But the stuff I learned then, like some of the emotional intelligence, some of those other things, I think is just absolutely invaluable.
What about you? Any regrets?
I regret not buying a certain guitar at one point. I play guitar too, and I have guitars at home. And I think I probably also regret treating my tube amp the way that I did, because it's not in great condition, and now I plug it in and it just crackles a lot.
That could be fun though.
But no, in general, outside of small things like that, no real regrets so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does the future hold? Like, what's your, couple years out, 10 years, 15, wherever you want to take it? What's it look like?
I think BlueSky is thriving and growing at that point. I think we've added, we're on track right now to add a few other verticals essentially, that I can't really get into at this point. But, I think that BlueSky will be growing. I would hope that GoodPolitics is scaled across the state. We've already been able to do some stuff in San Antonio and partner with some people in Dallas, but we hope that we can expand it even further, go into more rural areas as well, to just let people know, like, hey, it's cool to talk. It doesn't have to feel like your Thanksgiving dinner table to talk about politics. And then, I do think, at some point in the next 10 years, I'd love to jump in to the political arena in a more serious way. So I don't know what the timeline is for that. But yeah, I definitely see that in my future.
That's great. Walk me through the LBJ Presidential Library. So you're involved there.
Mm-hmm.
Give me two pieces, because I think a lot of people even that live here in Austin haven't ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, what do you do there?
Yeah. So, I mean, the presidential library, like every presidential library, highlights the accomplishments of that president. In this case, it's LBJ. And LBJ was a ridiculously accomplished president. So his library, you get to walk through all of the stuff related to civil rights and, some of the, Medicare, Medicaid, things like that he put into place. But then also there are sections on Vietnam, and there's stuff like that. So really, really interesting deep dive into the history of an era that I think is very similar to ours. Ridiculous technological change. This is when we were doing the space program at full force. We had a war that was not very popular and was not going very well. There was a lot of social upheaval and social issues that I think rightfully were being brought to the forefront and being dealt with. And people were really angry in general and scared. And I think that reminds me a lot of how today feels. And so diving into that era at the LBJ Library is really, really, I think, enlightening and interesting, no matter who you are or where you fall on any sort of partisan spectrum. But then the work that we do with the Future Forum is really focused on how do you take, with the being part of the LBJ Library means we're part of the National Archives. So it's federally funded, and because of that, we get access to speakers, and the weight that comes from an invitation from the library is pretty good. So we get to say, let's be a bridge with the Future Forum between issues that are happening nationally, but are also we're also seeing happen very close to us here locally. So something like homelessness or marijuana legalization or the census, or I think it's 2 weeks. It's in 2 weeks, a week from this coming Monday. We're doing an event focused on the Texas primary. We've got a reporter, like one of the head political reporters from the New York Times coming, and a few other folks that report specifically here in Texas to talk about the importance of Texas within the national landscape and the importance of these specific races that are going to be up on the primary. So just, we get to do some really, really cool things. We get to invite some really, really interesting people out. I had dinner with former CIA Director John Brennan last year. Just some really, I mean, that was intimidating.
Yeah.
Like, what does he already know about me? Probably way too much. But yeah, just, I mean, some really, really cool opportunities through that organization.
So how did you get involved there? Like, how did that happen? I mean, obviously you were already pretty involved, but is that just a relationship thing, or is that something where you strive to go get it? Or
well, I had been attending a lot of the events because I was really interested in the subject matter, bringing friends, and I got to know a few of the board members on the organization, and they did a call for board elections last year, and I got an email from 2 board members saying, "Hey, I would like to nominate you," and I got nominated and I got voted on. So
sounds like a common theme. You seem to put yourself in some situations and become involved and active a lot less than asking, "Hey, I would like to be." It's like you're around, and it just seems like the likely choice with your career or even with these other nonprofits.
Yeah, I like to. I mean, I do like to lead. But I like to. I like. I don't, I'm not. This is not a leadership comment. Like, I like to lead by no, but I like to, in my own life. I like to lead by actually doing the thing. And if I like it and there's an opportunity to get involved in a more official capacity, then like absolutely yes. This year I had to tell my wife no more boards. I'm not adding anything to my list outside of a few events here and there.
I like how you put that in a more official capacity. So you can still get involved, just not officially involved.
Correct.
So that way, if you don't always have to show up.
Exactly.
So you're also the Economic Prosperity Commission for the City of Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So give me a short, brief what that is, and also like what maybe you see the future of Austin. Like where are you at there?
So I'll start with I think the future of Austin is really bright, and I think it's going to be much, much bigger than it is now.
I agree.
Austin is on track to by 2040 be between 3 and 4 million people, closer to 4. At least the Central Texas area is, and Austin, is in a position where it needs to be growing up more. We need more density in the city, but we also have a big plus for us outside, when we compare to something like San Francisco or Seattle or New York, is we can actually grow out, right? So I don't know that that's necessarily the best thing to do, but we can do it. And it puts us in a position where while we're still going to have affordability challenges, we're not going to have them in the same way that San Francisco and New York do. So there's that. But Austin's got a lot of really big decisions to make. It's currently debating land use development code. It's debating transportation bills. It's just made some massive changes on how it prosecutes or declines to prosecute marijuana and things like that. There's some massive social changes happening here. Obviously, the homelessness ordinances last year, that change sparked quite a bit of political backlash. And so it does have challenges, but I think it's approaching most things in the right way. And I think it's in a position where it's going to continue to absorb a lot of runoff from major creative cities, major financial hubs. And Austin's going to continue to be one of those cities that's playing on the world stage that other cities around the world want to know what it's doing. So that's my prediction for Austin, is that it's going to keep tinkering its way through those things. But I think we're absolutely on track to keep growing and to continue to be a powerhouse.
And to give an idea, so I moved here in 2008, and I think there was 750,000 people in Austin. So we're going to be like 4 million-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Within 30 years of me moving here.
Yeah.
It's a massive growth. And obviously there's a lot of issues, like you said, with homelessness. So I have probably a different outlook and thought process for the homelessness, because I live downtown and I interacted with a lot. And to me, it just wasn't that big a deal. Mm-hmm. It was common. There, of course, there's some with some problems.
Yeah.
And I know this probably might not be your area of expertise, but any thoughts of of where we're going or what you would like to see happen there? Or
well, I mean, on on the issue of the homeless ordinances, I tend to think a couple of things. I tend to think the goal there was to say we know that fines on individuals who are experiencing homelessness keeps them from getting housed or getting a job or things like that, because if it snowballs, if they can't pay it, it snowballs, it becomes a warrant, they can't pass a background check.
And then they go thrown in jail, and then that's expensive for the city.
Exactly. So I think from that vantage point, the idea was, let's remove a government barrier in order to give people an opportunity to lift themselves up by their bootstraps, essentially. But politically, what made it really hard is I think it was done right before council took a recess, so council was not around to defend it, and a lot of people who look, and I'm not saying that people who disagree with that ordinance change are bad or anything like that. However, I think there were some people who had some very strong, maybe ill-intentioned motives that organized very quickly around this. And that happened pretty quickly after the ordinance change took effect. And yes, there was a visible increase in the number of homeless individuals in more visible areas. That was kind of the point, a little bit.
That's right by the convention center,
right,
too.
And it was, but for the ordinances, you want people to feel like they can be seen so that you can get them housed or get them services. You don't want them sleeping out in the middle of a wooded area near a park, building camps out there. You'd rather know as a city where they are so that you can start to move them through a continuum of care or get them the services they need and eventually get them into permanent supportive housing.
My thoughts, I think you got to do something. For one, you can't just leave it. It's going to happen, especially the growing city. Nice weather. There's a lot of items there. A lot of nice people here. And to me, removing all barriers possible I think that's the right direction. Whether it was executed properly or not, that's something different. But and to me, also, they're people. I mean, we got to help. Yeah. And it's part of, and the economy is great right now. So it's part of what our society, fortunately or unfortunately, has people who exceed extremely with very great means, and there's some people who don't, and that don't fit in our society very well. And a lot of mental health there.
Yeah.
I also think that the mental health is probably more of the fix instead of some Band-Aids, but it's hard to get them access to
and
that.
Austin's got great programs for that kind of stuff. There are incredible organizations here in town doing really, really great work, whether that's on the mental health side of things, or it's on the housing end, or it's on the workforce development end. There are some great organizations doing a lot of great work. The city does a lot of great work on this. They really do. They don't get the kind of credit that they deserve for it, but the city does a lot of great work, and they work in tandem with a lot of these organizations to do a lot of great work. To your point, one of the things that I tried to do last year, when it kind of blew up in everybody's faces, so to speak, in July and August, was I tried to just have as many conversations and talk about those conversations on social with as many homeless individuals as I could, because they're just people, and they are some of the brightest, most interesting, nicest people. I had a moment last year where I was talking to a homeless individual, and he told me, he like put his hand on my shoulder and said something really, really encouraging to me. And I walked away feeling like, wait, I mean, like I felt guilty that he felt like he needed to be encouraging me. And more often than not, that is how those conversations go. And it's mind blowing how humble a lot of these folks are, and how just good and kind hearted they are. And there are a few instances that are not good. Nobody should ever be excited when there's more violence. And neither should we attribute all violence to homeless individuals, nor should we assume that any violence that happens comes from that community. And that if it's happening, that is less of a reason to help them. So, anyway.
Yeah, it's one of those emotional spots. And I think this is kind of your point with your good politics is I think that when people get emotional, sometimes it gets difficult to talk about.
Right.
And I wish it wasn't that way, but at least you're doing something about that a little bit. Okay, so back to kind of the personal stuff a little bit, and then we just got a couple more minutes here.
Sure.
But, so what would you title this chapter of your life?
Oh, that's a good question. Bananas.
There you go. Or you could just be like BlueSky Partners.
Yeah. No.
.com.
No.
.io.
Yeah. .co.
.co. My bad.
Yeah. BlueSkyPartners.co.
That's the title of the chapter of the life.
No. I think it would be bananas. Not because I eat a lot of bananas, but because they're just bananas. It's been a decade full of ridiculous, and last 3-4 years, the learning curves have just been so steep. Maybe that's better. Maybe that's more approachable. Maybe I'd title it Learning Curves.
Learning curves. Yeah, I like bananas better. I think that's more marketable.
All right, we're going with bananas.
That's right.
We're going with option one.
That's right. Now I lost my train of thought completely. Okay. Well, so all right. So I should have asked this earlier back when we were talking about the band, but like, would there be any advice you would have gave that 15, 16-year-old self?
I think I would have told myself to write more. I think there are so many things that I have learned along the way that I forgot because I didn't write it down. And I think I would tell myself to write more. I enjoy writing. I just can't sit still long enough to do it. But I probably would have told 15-year-old Nate to write more.
And you're talking about writing songs or more just journaling?
Yeah, more journaling and keeping track of stuff that inspires me or makes me think, or it's really interesting, the stuff that I have written down. It's really interesting to go back and see how my thinking has evolved over time. I'm the core person is still the same, but I'm a very different person than as most people are than I was when I was 15. So
sure. And it's nice to download that out of your brain too. And I think, being able to see it again. So do you walk me through maybe a day in your life? Do you do any of that journaling now or meditations or anything like that?
I do. So, like I said, I have a hard time sitting still long enough to write. I actually tend to do a lot of journaling at the gym in Evernote. So it'll be like, I have my grandmother's knees. She's going to be 90 this year, and I have her eat her knees at 90 now.
That's unfortunate.
So I use the elliptical or something else that's low impact. And I'll usually do it for about 40 minutes, and I write a lot while I'm on it. Yeah.
I love that. That's actually interesting. So I've been learning Spanish while at the gym. I think when you're moving around, your brain really goes. Or if I really need to think, to the gym, to me is kind of a meditative state.
Yeah.
Because I can go through the workouts kind of mindfulness and then always thinking. And a lot of times my best ideas come from either at the gym or immediately after. Is there any routines that you have that is something that might help some people?
Oh, yeah. My routine is now just so ingrained. One big thing that I shifted last year with all these new community initiatives and things I'm involved in over the last couple of years, I got to the point where the timing of my morning routine was the kind of thing that I had to give myself a little grace over. But what actually happens during my morning routine is always exactly the same. I may wake up earlier or later, but I will cancel things if I'm not going to get at least 3 hours to myself in the morning, because typically I wake up between 5:30 and 6:30, and I feed the dogs, start the coffee. We make the coffee the night before, so all you have to do is like walk in and like push the button and zombie over to the, the fridge to get some water. So wake up. It's pretty standard, right? I'll wake up, feed the dogs, drink some coffee, read usually for about an hour. I'll check my email. I'll go to the gym. I write while I'm at the gym usually. Excuse me. And then I come home. I usually do about 30 to 45 minutes of work. And then I go out and I have meetings. But, one big shift outside of just giving myself some grace. So if I'm not up at 5:30, I don't feel like I've lost everything. Outside of that, another big shift that I made, because so much of my work is just, it's public facing. I'm out, I'm doing things, I'm meeting with people, I'm at events, it's all that kind of stuff. It doesn't give me much time Tuesday through Thursday to really get real work done. Basically from Monday night till Friday night, like I'm out. So one big shift that I made last year was I time blocked basically Monday until, from when I wake up and start my day until like 4 p.m. I don't schedule anything with anybody on Monday and on Friday. And that's when I get the bulk of my work done throughout the week. And then it's just meetings and events Monday night through Friday night.
Yeah, so batch process. I like that. So I do some similar stuff. And you've seen I have the booking link. But so 10 a.m. I don't know meetings before 10. Although
are you a morning person?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Yeah. But I'll stay up till 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But that which I was going to say, it could be a bad thing, because say you did have an event the night before and had a good drink or something.
Yeah.
Then you're like, I'll wake up a little later.
Well, and that's the thing is, I have really learned. So one new thing I instituted for myself this year is now I have once a month, I review my calendar for the next month. And I will go through, and if I've added events that are going to go late or things like that, I'll go through and I'll just start rescheduling stuff the morning after those events, so I'm not doing anything until noon, so I can do follow-ups from that event and sleep in a little bit and do all that kind of stuff.
So it's kind of actively scheduling. I've been doing that a little bit without knowing, because now that so many people can book me without me telling them to, I've been blocking out like, okay, I don't want any more meetings this day.
Yeah, totally.
Like 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out.
Totally.
I've even done a month out. But it's just been like on a hodgepodge basis. But it's interesting that it's kind of happening organically.
It's so necessary though. I mean, building
you
that.
lose it. You lose the day too quick.
And even if it's, throwing a date night on, or my wife and I do adventure weekends, because we don't get much time during the week. So there's one weekend every month that is blocked out. I don't do anything. It's just she and I. I plan one month. She plans the next month.
Any place that you like to go?
I mean, we live across the street basically from McKinney Falls State Park. So we spend a lot of time at McKinney Falls.
Love that place.
We go see movies all the time. We're at Alamo Drafthouse every week. And then we love getting out to like Wimberley. We like taking day trips down to San Antonio, stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah, we're doing a date night tonight, going to Dashboard Confessionals.
Nice.
Yes.
Really?
2001-esque right here we go.
Man. Screaming infidelity.
Yes, that's right.
Wow. Okay. That's a throwback right there.
It's going to be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Dinner beforehand.
You're close to my favorite 1-2 punch here. Well, 1, 2, 3. It's the pool.
Oh, yeah. Pool burger.
Pool burger and
Deep Eddy Cabaret.
Deep Eddy Cabaret.
Yeah. There's 68 degrees or whatever kitchen, but I don't go there very often. But Pool burgers, the hippie burger, which is it's a vegetarian one, but if you get it with the bacon on top, it's called the Dazed and Confused. That's the best of the best.
Really?
Yeah, that's the best. That's better than a hamburger.
You add bacon to the veggie burger.
It's called the Dazed and Confused.
Okay.
Trust me, get that.
Okay.
Get a hurricane with a floater.
Okay.
Good to go. That's all you need is one. And for me, I just, bike home. I usually just ride the bicycle there.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice.
Yeah, it's gets you in trouble. My brother-in-law is vegetarian, so like when he comes to town, he lives in Denver. He has to go to Pool Burger.
Oh, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's so good.
It's a cool. They did that's a very interesting use of space too. Very small footprint, but really good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
good
so
job.
Let's wrap up. Let's do the last question.
Sure.
How would you like to be remembered?
As a friend. Yeah.
That's a great short answer.
Yeah.
And quick too. So
yeah.
I love it. Well, Nate, it was a super pleasure to have you here on the podcast. Really
so
appreciate
happy to
you coming by.
here.
Yeah,
All right,
man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Cheers.